Well, looky, looky, what do we have here? Looks like a 1991 KTM 500. So, quick update. I haven't done much with this girl in terms of videos in a while. Need to definitely get you guys a video of her running. She's a colorful beast, isn't she? So, I did a video yesterday about the clutch cover. I got that changed over to this one here. And some people are asking me about troubleshooting and also kind of a buyer's guide. And I'll kind of talk about a couple things that you may find with these bikes. I mean, obviously the parts are pretty hard to find if something goes wrong. The clutch cover is a big thing. So you definitely, like I say, you want to check under here for repairs, leaks. That's what the antifreeze with water tends to destroy on the magnesium clutch covers. I am pretty sure that from 94 on, there was no more magnesium used, as I said earlier in the video. 93 is questionable, though. I don't have a firm answer on that, so you guys have to check. If it is a magnesium clutch cover, it'll say magnesium. So what else can go wrong? Nothing huge. These little boots, they can crack very frequently. So if they do, you obviously want to either find a replacement somewhere. I think there are some people that do sell those, or you can get like a Boysen rad valve, or you can just go in and very carefully, look for cracks. A lot of times these are surface level. I don't think I've ever seen one go all the way through, but that's not to say that it couldn't happen. The other one that gets cracked frequently, I'll just show y'all right here on this side, is this airbox boot. Particularly here, these get very dry. You get a crack here, and then, obviously you're not even getting any filtration. It just goes straight through. So you want to keep that moist and lubricated. Keep that supple with some sort of good silicone. In terms of other issues, as I always say, when you buy these, pop off the crank, this little cover for the ignition. See if you can jiggle the flywheel. A lot of times when guys go down on these, they'll jam this pipe right into here. So you might see this burnt, or maybe you see this pipe really close and you can't remove the cover. That's kind of an issue. The brakes are a tough thing on these older ones. So a little different caliper setup. These Brembos are basically what I would call like your single caliper Brembos. And this style, I think you can see with that little Brembo lettering on it that looks like that. Those are very hard to find. And the parts I've looked in Europe on Andre Horvath's site, those are harder to find. This particular style where you've got the little Brembo that's, kind of engraved and comes out a bit, that little decal, or actually that design, that's a little easier to find parts for. I believe those you can find parts. They're generally not black. I converted this 92 to that. This bike right here, this 95, it looks like that. And then the front is very, well, can't really show you all that, sorry. The front basically is the twin caliper Brembo. But on the older bikes, the 92 550 came with this thing in the back, and it had a dual caliper in the front. Those are easier to get parts for, but anything 91 back is going to be tougher, particularly these single caliper Brembos. So you just kind of have to really see if your brakes are actually working. And a lot of times if they need to get bled, that's fine, but you could have some bad O-rings in there. You're not going to have good brakes. The pistons, I'm actually not an expert on what's going on with that. There are a lot of folks, used to be on KTM Talk, and now in some of the Facebook groups, that would basically run a Wiseco piston in here. But what I remember is that you've got to be very clear on your tolerances. And there's a calculation, of course, because from memory, that Wiseco piston has an expansion rate that's different than the stock OEM piston, which I think is made by Mahle, perhaps Mahle. So there is some detail to that. You're going to want to ask some of the folks that are a little more experienced in some of those big bore groups on these KTMs. You may also want to talk to the folks at Power Seal and ask them if they've done any KTM cylinders and matched those to a Wiseco. Because again, the stock piston, which I think is, the KTM OEM, is going to be a little different than your Wiseco in terms of the expansion rate. So you don't want a seizure, but that's a bit of an issue. There are folks that rebuild the rods. There are some guys like Darren Scott, who's in some of the KTM groups, who have run a CR500 rod on this version KTM 500 motor. So you have some flexibility there. I do believe that the bearings are all available. Even the industrial roller bearings, you just have to source that and talk to some folks that really know how to get them. Would I take a basket case KTM and just decide to rebuild it if it's not running at all, if it's just a box of parts? Well, I'm not sure I would. I've got a spare motor and I have no intention of putting that back together and making it run, partly because I have 3 of these, but also because I want the spare parts. So honestly, the answer would probably be sadly no. You may do better off finding a 440 or one of those. Those are generally pretty cheap, and just using that, or perhaps upgrading the motor, maybe boring it out, putting a 550 piston in it and turning it into a short stroke 500. There's a lot of variations. Even guys like Darren Scott have done KTM 620 and all sorts of variations. So unfortunately, I mean, as robust as these bikes are, they just are not that plentiful parts-wise. So you end up with a challenge when you're trying to do things with these bikes. They're incredibly slim. They're made really well. They're just awesome. But yeah, if I was buying one, I'd make sure it's running well. I'd make sure that you've got tight crank by grabbing the flywheel. I would, of course, check under the crankcase there, and the clutch cover and all of that stuff, just to be sure. But they're awesome bikes, but unfortunately, like a lot of the big bores, a lot of this stuff is not available, and you don't have as much popularity as you do with, the KX500 and some of those other bikes. But as I said, they're great bikes. Just buyer beware. Make sure you're getting something pretty decent, and check all the normal stuff that you would. And that's about it, folks. We'll see you on the next one.